after talking to you about, making these allies with these different energetic entities, which often appear as animals, during the dieta, I had no psychoactive substances at all, just a very clean diet. I was in isolation. I was in British Columbia and in Sedona for a little bit by myself. But I remember I started interacting with different energies and different, what seemed like beings in the astral, and they became allies. I remember they were mostly maternal, like a big mother brown bear, a big mother tarantula, some different snakes, and they had different purposes. One could help eat some anxiety. If I had anxiety, I could call on one of these snakes and it would come in and it would just eat the anxiety and go away. And I remember as I was experiencing this, oftentimes there would be this kind of almost like an aggressive interaction at first, where like I would see the snake and the snake would go to attack me. And then if I tried to like wrestle with it and if I tried to fight it, it was just this perpetuating this cycle, and it was taking forever, So I think there's this idea of dominion through strength, but really the dominion came with surrender and love, saying, I am source, you are source. Together we are, we're both source, we're both the same. And so whenever I felt that energy of conflict, just continuing with that and just being love. And so if the snake came at me to come and bite me or something, it was just reminding that. And then ultimately all of that would calm, and I would form these allies. And I haven't like kept up psychically with the allies, but I can remember them really visibly. But I think the most important thing is, and I've encountered this also subsequently in other ceremonies where even dark energies have come, and when I've shown up in this kind of love, in this state that you're talking about, getting yourself to that medicine world of love and surrender, and this kind of unshaking confidence that when we are actualized as love as a being, there's nothing aggressive that's going to come. There's no power that's greater than that power, than that source energy, love energy power. So there's nothing to fear. And then you it unravels these situations, but you not acting in fear or in conflict and acting out of duality, acting out of union in love with these beings, it makes everything just really smooth, and you start to form these kind of alliances with these energies. Or if it's a really negative energy, it just goes away. It's just like, oh, this is not the place for me. I'm going to go someplace where I can find fear and I can find, somebody to fight. And when you're not in that place, it really changes everything.
Well, the beauty of this idea of the medicine world is that you harness what truly is the most powerful in spirit. So, what antagonist is there ultimately to love that can maintain that antagonism in the presence of love? And ultimately nothing. And so there's this vast duality of wanting to fight it out in fear. And when you surrender to love and give it all back to love, all the beings associated with it they lose all their potency. They just that whole like raw beast like vibe just totally chills out and comes down, and ultimately there is nothing to fear in it, and there is nothing to fight. And that's such a liberating state to be in, to be able to witness your own fears and anxieties and, things that get us, bent out of shape, and ultimately realize that we can surrender them to source and be able to find that equilibrium and balance in a way that's just so much faster and more efficient and easier for us. And that's something that the idea of, this medicine world gives us. Learning how to invoke it for yourself and learning how to train in it and experience it ultimately keeps you in a centered place no matter what's happening. And that's what allows you to be your best. And so I think of, for the people that are really interested in this, optimization of themselves and optimization of whatever their pursuits or practices are, the more centered, the more relaxed, and the more receptive you can be in the face of anything and everything that's going on around you is how you can always tap into that highest potential that you have and actualize on that potential. And, this is elite consciousness training, and it's actually simpler than harder. But if your consciousness is in a balanced, open, receptive, and loving state, that can make you, better in literally anything you're doing, whether it's your family life, your business, if you're in the ring, in an MMA battle, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If you're centered and open, you'll be faster than the other person that's in a state of reaction. And I think that's where the real power of this is.
what are some basic tips that you offer? And of course, for the full thing, I absolutely encourage people to go take the Trinity course, if that's what it's called, or whatever programs that you're offering. But for anybody who's just listening and wants to be able to find that state within themselves, either, during ceremony, before ceremony, or just in daily life, what do you instruct as a way for people to access, what is always true within that state of love?
I think the number one thing to work on, and it's not hard, it's really not hard, but it's to recognize that the heart has more purpose than just beating. It does more than just pump blood. And the brain is an organism that we've trained a ton, but we haven't done a lot of heart training. And so it's sort of like lucky if you fall in love and it turns on, or you feel really passionate about something. People just sort of like act like that's some randomness. And I think that the real training is just to get the brain and heart in balance, and to let the heart have its own space like we let the brain and the mind have its own space, and that we ultimately train that more than just, cardio or what it is to be in a kind of passionate, romantic kind of state. And that can be done with simple meditation, trance ceremonies, or you can participate in something like Trinity retreats and really, give that some focus and some time to bring that into balance. But that's where the real potency comes in. That's where the real power is. When I always, said, when you're in battle and you're facing battle, if you can be in a state of absolute relaxation, no fear whatsoever, you can see what's coming before it's even coming. It makes you just that much faster. You become real time and in a true flow state. And that literally comes through the heart. The brain is completely reactory. It requires sensory input, computing, and then action. And the heart doesn't. The heart represents a field that's always real time. And it's literally the 4D space of time. So it's like there's space-time, and the brain is always reacting to the movement of light and what's happening in space-time. And the heart is always there in the field, emanating and receiving within that. So when you can get the brain and heart into a state of balance, then it puts you into flow state, and you truly are at your best. And that starts with intention. So it just starts with the intention that there's a recognition of the purpose of that. And I think for anyone who wants to be at their best, it's a really simple intention to have the heart and the brain both in equal balance to each other. And so since we've done so much brain training, we just need to give some time to the heart. And I think that, like pre-workout or, waking up in the morning, going to bed, just 2 to 3 minutes is all it needs. It doesn't need a lot of time. It's a very fast organ to balancing and recentering with the rest of sort of the totality of space-time and what's going on. Whereas the brain really chews on stuff and thinks about stuff a lot and kind of gets wrapped up in its own thinking. The heart's not like that. So just a couple of minutes to let the heart really just be free, and let the brain, if you imagine the heart just being like a field bigger than the body, just you can give it any color you want, but just a field of energy bigger than the body, and the brain just floating and resting within that field of the heart, and breathing into that space and taking long, slow, deep breaths for a couple of minutes, and just intending for that balance to exist is really the first place to start. And just telling yourself that it's important to have that balance and to cultivate that balance in your life. And then little by little, you'll start to realize that you're living from that space. It's like finding your center of gravity in your body. It ultimately is centered in your consciousness world. Your mental world is centered inside your heart. And you become, really strong to the stimulus of what's going on around you. So I think that's like really the first place to start.
Yeah, I love that image of just focusing your energy, because you can, using your thoughts and imagination, you can then allow the heart to have that space. I mean, the brain is a powerful tool, but bending it, to your purpose and your desire to choose to do that, and then imagining that heart field expanding, and then knowing that the thoughts may come in your brain and things may happen. The brain actually produces thoughts like the heart produces beats. It's just going to happen. But creating that field that's, so expansive, and then allowing your brain to float in that and have its thoughts, but just, breathing into that field from your heart expanding. And I think people, we aren't taught how much agency and how much power we actually have to be able to choose to do something like that. We think we need some other kind of guide or some other special technique, but it like you said, it becomes really simple. And we understand that we're powerful enough to do that. And just having that one mechanism of imagining your heart field expanding and expanding as wide as you want. It can encompass the room, it can encompass the world, and then your brain is just floating in that. But the field that you're identified as is that field of love emanating from the heart. That simple thing, I think, is incredibly powerful. And it, it goes back to the initial medicine world that you talked about and, you explained on the podcast. It's finding that place of source energy and love in your heart, seeing how it's connected to all things, and then changing and shifting your point of identity to that rather than the identity of the brain, this kind of brain-centric idea that we all too often have. And incredibly powerful when you can do that.
Yeah, and it just takes a little bit of practice. I think the thing that is, the big obstacle for people is just the idea that they don't know how to get started. So it seems all too out there or too difficult, or how do I even meditate, right? And too much time. So I see those as like really the big things that keep people from these practices. And so over the years, I've tried to find the things that are really the simplest and the fastest and the most effective to making dramatic change in our lives. And so, I love spiritual practices that I do alongside my normal practice. So if I go to the gym, now I can turn the gym into how I do my spiritual practice. If I have to be at a computer all the time, I can turn how I'm at the computer into my spiritual practice. And I can transform my daily interaction into the growth of my spirit and into the growth of my spiritual practice. And what I mean by that isn't something separate to life. It's how you approach life and how you do it from your very best and from your most optimized space. So, like, to me, your spirit is your core essence. It's what makes you you, and it's a miracle. It's unique to anybody else. So if you think right now about you, there's no copy of you, clone of you, or other you in this whole universe. And the universe is huge. The universe is like billions of galaxies, and there's you. And to me, that's a fundamental miracle. And that is your spirit. That is how you are absolutely, truly 100% unique. And when you tap into that uniqueness, that's when all of your talents come out. That's when your true, ability beyond the abilities that anyone else has gets awakened. And so ultimately, I found that the nexus of that was in our hearts, and it gave the power to the brain to get sort of out of our own way and out of our own blocks to where we could fully harness that potential. And it was truly enlightening. It awakened, anybody and everybody, and something that I thought that could be really powerful for all of us to share in.
Amazing, man. So where do people go if they're interested in the Trinity retreats?
You go to bluemorphoretreats.world. And we have a cool, beautiful website there, and it's got all the information on it. It breaks it down into the 3 main pillars. So just go to bluemorphoretreats.world, and you see how the retreats are based in the idea of detox cleansing and shamanic dieta, ceremonies and body practices, and it really does become a really full, holistic expression of mind, body, spirit. It's a reset, it's a realignment, and it's a way to completely, reactivate and turn our total capacity back on.
Well, Hamilton, give my love to Christian. I haven't talked to him in a while either, but send him my absolute best. And it's just a true pleasure to get to connect with you like this and share some stories. And I want to do this again at some point. There's still some stories that are my favorites that we didn't even get to. Some stories from the old gunslinging days, which are amazing, and just always the wisdom that you have, and from traversing and experiencing all this yourself. It's not like you had an idea about this and then you're just telling what somebody else said. You're out there experiencing and actually feeling it and living it. And that's just such a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and just forever grateful for what you've offered to me and what you're offering the world.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm super grateful to you too. I've always appreciated the bond that we've shared and our friendship over the years. And, I'd love to talk with you obviously as often as we can, whenever we get that chance to be able to connect. It's always a joy. And I really appreciate it as well. It's been an unbelievable gift. And, I've been following your trajectory, and I'm just so proud of you, and really, really stoked with the progress that you've made with, all of your pursuits. And it's just an unbelievable pleasure to be able to connect like this. So thank you so much for letting me to be on your podcast again. And, to all the listeners, much love to everybody. And thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody.